We're about to look at the trailer for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood starring Tom Hanks, Enrico Colantoni, and Matthew Rhys. It's directed by Mariel Heller. It's a true story based on the real-life friendship of Fred Rogers and journalist Tom Junod. Growing up, I was very, very much a fan of Mr. Rogers and his TV show. I watched it religiously. This is something I am looking forward to. Let's check this out.
Hey, I'm looking for Fred Rogers. In here.
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor.
Oh my goodness.
Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Please won't you be my neighbor? Hello, neighbor.
Mr. Rogers, I'm here to interview you.
It is so nice to meet you.
You okay?
Profiling Mr. Rogers.
Boyd, please don't ruin my childhood.
This piece will be for an issue about heroes. Do you consider yourself a hero?
We are trying to give the world positive ways of dealing with their feelings.
Yeah? Like what?
There are many things you can do. You can play all the lowest keys on a piano at the same time.
You love broken people. Like me.
Sometimes we have to ask for help, and that's okay. I think the best thing we can do is to let people know that each one of them is precious.
Hey, Mr. Rogers! It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Please won't you be my neighbor?
That was wonderful.
I'm really glad they're bringing this to life. Fred Rogers seemed to be that guy who was just a pure soul, a pure-hearted person who just cared relentlessly for people of all walks of life. Over the last several years, it seems like so many stories have come out about people. I'm just glad that nothing bad has come out about Mr. Rogers. I'm so relieved because so many heroes have been taken down, man, and we're like, oh wow, that person was horrible. And so far, Mr. Rogers, his profile has remained clean, and he's just been known to be a good person, and that's it. And I'm like, good. And I'm glad they're making a movie about him. He's a good dude, and he gave as much as he could while he was alive. And now we have a sort of a biopic, because it's not going back to the beginning of his life. It's starting at a very specific point in time. And I think this is actually a neat way to go about it, because biopics are always interesting. You can't really summarize a person's life, especially someone as complex as Fred Rogers, in 2 hours. Fred Rogers had a whole lot that he did in life before Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood became a thing, and while it would be really cool to see a movie or TV show chronicling his whole life leading up to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and then, some of that experience as well, picking it up from where they're picking it up is still pretty cool. It has the sweetness and the purity of the TV show. It seems like, in a way, they're sort of bringing that show back to life through Tom Hanks. The reason why I would like to see, him growing up and all of that stuff and everything that came before Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is because that's the stuff that most people don't know. Most of us only know Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Just like, this is sort of a random reference, but maybe it'll make sense to a lot of you guys. Growing up, for me, Alec Guinness was just Obi-Wan Kenobi. I didn't even consider the fact that he had a whole long spanning career before Star Wars came around, but he had a very lengthy career full of lots of interesting roles, but most of us only know him as Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it's likewise with Fred Rogers, where you've got this guy who's had done a lot in his life, but we only know him as Mr. Rogers. And so this film, in a way, is taking it from that angle of sort of bringing back Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood to life, because it's picking it up, when that show is already, been on the air for a long time. I mean, she says it herself. The Tom Junod's wife says, "Please don't ruin my childhood." It seems like something like that could easily happen with journalists, where they're covering someone's life and it's like it completely shatters what you initially thought of that person. You sort of keep these heroes that you have from your childhood on a pedestal, and they seem pure and clean and pristine, and you don't want that to be tarnished in any way. Like I was saying earlier about our heroes, you know, there's so many that have been knocked down, as they should, I guess. So it's tough, you know, when you're dealing with that hero inside you, where you're like, but like, this is what I remember. Like I said earlier, I'm happy he still has a clean profile. I'm very, very much interested in watching this. I think Tom Hanks is doing a great job here of bringing him to life. I don't know anything about Tom Junod. I have never heard of the dude, and this is the first time I'm learning of him. And so in that regard, it's cool that this movie exists as well. As I mentioned, there was a lot of stuff leading up to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And of course, there was stuff during the show that a lot of people don't know about. And I imagine this friendship is one of those things. Maybe it's just me, but as far as I could tell, most people don't know about this friendship. For me, this is a very important story to tell, not just because I grew up with Fred Rogers, but it's one of those things where I feel like these kinds of people don't really exist on TV anymore. I mean, maybe they do and I'm just not paying attention. There was something just very simple and lovely about that show that is largely lost today, and I don't know if it's ever going to come back. It's like technology has shifted in such a way that it feels like it doesn't allow for something like that. To me, Sesame Street is the last vestige of that era, long gone by, and is just not coming back. And Fred Rogers is part of that era, and it's one of those things where, you know, times change, things evolve with new technology, new ways of telling stories and whatnot, new ways of communicating with children, and that's the natural order of things. But doesn't mean I have to like it, you know? There's some sliver of hope left in me that we sort of bring this style back someday because of its simplicity and its loveliness and just how pure it is. Because everything is so like fast, bang, bang, like as quick as possible. Dealing with the short attention span of people today, you know, everyone's got an iPad or a phone in their hands, and that's how we're teaching and raising our kids. Things have changed, and this is one of those films that allows you to kind of reminisce and appreciate that former era that we used to live in. And anyway, I could keep going on about that, but thank you, Tom Hanks, for making this movie. Really appreciate that. Bringing Fred Rogers to life in the way that you have here, it's really, really cool. Anyways, would love to hear what you guys think about this trailer, what your thoughts on my thoughts, and yeah, your feelings in general about Fred Rogers, your favorite episode, if you can remember that.